Which are beautiful textile stuff across us from the West Country. I'm just going to go through the process now. Firstly, I'm going to start by taking off the breast. I'm going to follow the line of the breast, and we come around at a curve to just under the shoulder there. Just to go through the bone, I'm going to take my saw, just gently taking the breast off like that, and then the next bit is to go take the breast off the other side. Next, I'm going to take off what we call the short four. Now that's the two shoulders plus the neck in one piece. So what I do, I hand just the neck of the lamb off the end with my steak knife. I'm going to come between the 5th and the 6th vertebrae, just come straight down, and then again with the saw. Now, as soon as I can hear that saw has gone through the bone, I want to transfer from a saw to a knife, because the problem with sawing through the meat, you'll start to hacksaw the meat, and you never want that because it leaves little bits of meat. It's not a good finish for your cutting. Next, I'm going to look at taking what we call the best end from our saddle. Now, the best end is where you get your racks, where you get your lamb cutlets from, and the saddle will be the loin chop. So if I just peel back the kidney and suet a little bit, you can see you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4 bones there. Now just next to this bone we're going to find the joint. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut through what we call the sixpence, which is the joint of the vertebrae there, just on the saddle side of the rib bones for the best end. And now, let's try and get it so you guys can see. With my knife, I'm going to come down on the saddle side, inside the bone, either side of the best end. Just open it up. Then, all I'm going to do, just one hard push, weight at the table. And what that does, that just opens the joint there, so you can see where we've just come through the vertebrae and open up there, and then just cut straight down. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take the saddle from the legs. I'm going to be leaving the chump on the legs, and the point where I'm going to look to cut them off is where the chump, or what we call the rump, just meets the saddle. So it's around the hip bone there. So if you see, there's a little dip here just as the bones come in. So with my steak knife, I'm just going to cut along the top of that there, just as the dip comes in, straight, and then straight to the saw, trying to keep that line nice and straight going down. And if you listen, as soon as I hear that saw go through the bone, I want to stop sawing. You never want to saw your meat. And just with the steak knife, it's going to go all the way down. So there we have our saddle there. First thing I'm going to do is split the leg down the middle. Now you can see a bit of cartilage there. That tells me the sex of the animal as well. This one's actually a male. So split straight down there. You'll be breaking this soft bone in between, and then I'll be sawing the bone in the middle. So I'll do that now. This leg here, I'm going to take the chump off. Now the line you're looking, just at the bottom of this bone, what we call an H bone, generally you want to look about a finger's width at the bottom of that. You want to keep it straight to your other end. Once we take that chump off, what we want to have is a nice straight, almost, leg there. Been a while since I've done this. But the idea is, in the old-fashioned way, in a butcher shop window, you'd have a row of them hanging with a nice, beautiful straight line all the way underneath. That's the main process for breaking your lamb down into primals. Next, we'll go back to our short four. So the first thing I'm going to do, just run just the tip of my knife again down. I just want to break down that little layer of fat there. If I go too deep, I'm cutting straight into my neck fillet. So I'm just going on the fat at the top. So just from the tip of my knife, work down. I'm just going to come a little curve at the bottom just before we get to this bit here, which is called the scrag end. As soon as you break that first little layer of meat, before you get into the actual neck fillet, put the knife down, there's a little bit of elbow grease, and pull and open up. So now I've got the bones here, I've opened up that little seam, and just my knife can just run down the bones and that will tell you exactly where to cut. Just a little curve around the neck. You come round to leave yourself a nice little round shoulder. The first thing you want to look at with your best end is when the lambs are skinned, leaves a layer between the skin and fat, which we call the bark. Now you can leave this on, but when it's cooked that does get quite tough, so what we like to do is take it off. Now with just the tip of your knife you're going to run it down the very back of the best end, just makes things a little bit easier for you. When I say just the tip, I mean just the tip, less than a millimetre. And from the front going back, just going to pull that fat off, and just a good hard pull. Trying to be careful not to tear that fat. You take the bark off, and you've got the bark on the other side. What I'm going to do for now is just take one off one side, just to show you guys. Next thing I want to do is what we call taking the chine bone off. Now the chine bone is essentially the centre spine. So where you see the ribs, I'm going to saw just next to them. That opens it out and that lets me scoop the eye of the meat straight off that chine bone. Got to be ever so delicate with this because these are very thin ribs. If you go too hard, what you're going to do, you're going to saw into the eye of the meat, at which point your rack of lamb is ruined. Not going too hard, pushing down, letting the weight of the animal do the work. Open it out, because the last thing I want to do is saw into that eye of the meat. That's a whole rack ruined, there's quite a prize cut destroyed at that point. Next thing I'm going to remove is what we call the bottom of the blade bone. It's a little bit of cartilage that sits at the bottom of the shoulder blade, which we go through just in the cut. Now just opening that out, and that can go with the rest of our bones. And the next piece to remove with this yellow cartilage that runs down the back, and that's what we call the paddy whack. Loosen it up, a good hard tug should pull that right out. The next part to look at is French trimming these bones. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave these bones a little bit long, but what you're generally looking for is about that length, let's say just 1.5 inches above this little diamond of fat just here. So the top of the diamond, generally that's how long we'd like our bones go. I'm going to leave these a little bit longer for now. I'm just going to show you how the French trimming process works. So to the bottom of our meat, or the bottom of the eye, we want to look at a straight line with a knife straight through to the bones, along the top, cut through the fat. And then what I'm going to do, just scoop that fat